back in, everyone, to a fabulous new Whisper in the Wings from Stage Whisper. We're very excited about our show today. Today is a show that deals with such an important idea, organization that's close to our hearts, and especially now more than ever in this day and age. And of course, we are talking about unions. And joining us to speak to us about this incredible show we got to take in is the actress that plays Sara Wesker, Lottie Walker. She joins us to talk about her piece, Chopped Liver and Unions, which is playing now through June 7th at 59E59 theaters. And you can get your tickets and more information by visiting 59e59.org. This is a fantastic show, a wonderful show. If you're curious about why unions are important, if you're curious about what unions are, maybe even how they came about, this is the show for you. So with that, let us go ahead and welcome on our guest, Lottie. Welcome to Whisper in the Wings from Stage Whisper.
Thank you so much. How lovely to be here, and how lovely to hear such nice things said about the show.
Thank you so much for joining us. And absolutely, I mean, the show was so wonderful. It literally is 80 minutes of just brilliance. I love a good show about unions, and the fact that we got to hear about unions across the pond and their role with everything and how it came to be and all this wonderful stuff that is true too. That was the amazing thing. It was heartbreaking to hear about the person you tapped into who had just passed recently, but also it was like, wow, look at this incredible first person source. I mean, that's amazing. So I'm doing a really terrible job of describing the show. So
no, you carry on. You're doing a great job. I'd go and see it.
Why don't we start with you and have you tell us a little bit about what Chopped Liver and Unions is about?
So it is the story of Sara Wesker, who I'd never heard of, but she was the auntie of the famous playwright Sir Arnold Wesker. But Sara was actually a refugee from Ukraine at the early part of the 20th century. She grew up in the deprived East End of London, as indeed did I. And she was a political activist and a trade union leader. And she actually set up her own union, and she fought at the Battle of Cable Street when the whole of the East End rose up against the fascists and Sir Rodwell Mosley. And she was a pretty special lady. The Wesker family, bless them, were really helpful in giving me some little personal anecdotes, because there's not much about Sara on record. So, the show is mainly about the events and how she would have interacted there. But they gave me some lovely little anecdotes, and they were really, really helpful. I particularly like the fact that when they came over to the UK, she and her sister slept on the sacks that the bananas were stored in on the ship. And it was all very comfy, which is very sweet. And she was also, Lady Dusty Wesker said, I feel very sorry for whoever's playing Sara, because she was quite some character. Good luck. So it's a bit of a responsibility.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, I'm curious to know, how is it that you came upon this piece?
Well, I'll try and make this very long story quite short. I was asked to sing at the unveiling of a plaque to the Bryanton May Match Girls. Now, the Match Girls, I think global audience knows about them because they featured in the Enola Holmes movie, but they basically started the trade union movement as we recognise it in the UK. And their plaque was only unveiled a couple of years ago. Whilst there, I met a lovely historian, Louise Raw, and she told me about lots of women that she would like to see more in the public eye who had been forgotten. And she mentioned Sara. And because I'm an actress and because I like all the arty stuff, I was really attracted by the fact that she was Arnold Wesker's auntie and no one knew about her, and why should she be famous? Then I looked into things a little bit more deeply and thought she really should not have been forgotten. So this is a play. This is a one-woman show, and it's not about him at all. I love the fact that it's mainly about women, and strong women, and how we survive in spite of it all.
Yes, I love that. That was a particularly great, point on the map for me as well. I was like, not only are we discussing this brilliant thing, unions, but we are showing how women really played a huge role in that. So I love that. What has it been like developing this piece?
Well, it keeps developing. It's kind of growing itself, I think, because every time we meet someone, we find out more information. And there's, as I said, there's not very much information about Sarah on record, but there's a lot about the period of time. And it is amazing the amount of people who come out of the show and say, oh, my parents worked in the garment trade. Oh, my dad was a union leader. My great grandfather fought at the Battle of Cable Street, and we're getting all these different stories. So what was really lovely about this is what I wanted to do, what fascinated me was that these girls didn't have any union backing. Neither did the Match Girls. And both the Match Girls and the Singing Strikers of 1928 that Sarah led, they actually sang songs that they wrote all the lyrics to themselves, set popular tunes of the day. And I thought, I want to do a play featuring all those songs. And it was proving very, very difficult to actually find the tunes. So we've got the book. We've been given a copy of the book, which is wonderful, with all the Rego Girls songs for 28 in it. And we use some of them, but only the ones that we can actually find the tunes to. So you never know, it might develop with a few more tunes in it if we actually manage to find out what they are. But it's not a musical. I think that's really important to say. The show's not a musical, so anyone expecting that will be disappointed. But there are opportunities to join in. There's a little bit of audience participation if required.
I love it. Now, I'm curious to know. I mean, I think the answer is obvious, but I'm still going to ask, what is the message or thought you hope that audiences will take away from this piece?
Well, it might not be that obvious because it's the message, the thing that I always say with all our work is that nothing changes except the names. And I think that's what people need to remember, that, the fight is never over. And for all we've progressed, there's an awful lot of regression going on as well, especially in the world of labour rights at the moment. Certainly in the UK, the unions are being suppressed. I'm sure it's like it the world over. And we just need to keep fighting for the small person. So fight for the little man and the individuals. And funnily enough, I went to see Sufs yesterday, which I thought was fantastic. And that's exactly the same message. And they actually say that. They say that directly about the equal representation and whatever. And I thought, yeah, that is exactly it. You think you've won something and you really haven't. We say in our show, women got the vote. They didn't. Women over 30 who were married and owned a house got the vote for a long time. It was another 20 odd years before anybody else did. So, I think that is the key message is you just have to stay aware. You have to stay aware. You don't have to be overtly political, but you have to stay aware and be aware of when it might be your time to speak up and say something.
Amen. Say that again for the people in the back. Absolutely. My final question for this first part is, who do you hope have access to chopped liver and unions?
Oh gosh, I really want young people to see it. I want young women to see it because very often young people, especially young women, feel they don't have a voice. And Sara Wesker was never going to allow anyone to tell her she didn't have a voice. So I think it will be really, really good for them to see that they can come and they can make a difference. And one of the things that I would like to do with the show is, I love touring it. I like taking it to new places. And we've got really appreciative theatre audiences who have seen it over the past year or so. But I would like to think about taking it into, not preaching to the converted necessarily with union meetings, although that would be nice, but to take it into schools, colleges. And someone said the other week, it should be on the school syllabus, which I would love. It's never going to happen. But I just think it would be good to actually speak to that new generation and let them see that 100 years ago things weren't that different, and they can actually make life better for themselves. That is one of the great things actually with stuff. I shouldn't really be promoting another show, but I can't help it because I enjoyed it so much. And right at the back of the stalls where I was sitting, there were at least 3 big coach parties of teenage girls. And I thought it was brilliant that whoever's teaching them is bringing them out in buses to see something like that that's going to make them feel that they can be empowered.
Well, for the second part of our interview, we love giving our listeners the chance to get to know our guests a little bit better. Pull the curtain back, if you will. And I'm so excited to get to know you a bit more. And I want to start by asking you, what or who inspires you? What playwrights, composers, or shows have inspired you in the past, or just some of your favorites?
Oh, that's a tricky question because I have such an eclectic taste in absolutely everything. But I think in terms of what I actually do, the playwright Morgan Lloyd Malcolm is way up there. I love her. And I was really inspired by the show Emilia that she did. If you know it, it was an all-female cast, all-female tech crew, all-female production team, started at the Globe Theatre. And about something else that I'm passionate about, in case you haven't noticed, is people who get written out of history, who really should be remembered and aren't. And this was about Emilia Bassano, who was Shakespeare's Dark Lady of the Sonnets. It was a fabulous show, absolutely fabulous. Lots of music, totally accessible. It was wonderful. So I love her work. So on the contemporary front, I'm a big fan of all the classic musicals. Can't help myself. Fiddler on the Roof, Guys and Dolls, anything with Julie Andrews in it. When I grow up, I want to be Julie Andrews, but that's probably highly unlikely now. But I think I've missed my moment. But you never know. And I also like Alan Bennett's work. Alan Bennett is very clever at making people laugh and making them think at the same time. And that is a particular skill. And I think you get so far with, if you make something amusing and you make it human, people are much likely to take it away and think about it than if you just give them a lecture. And I think he's an absolute master at that. So, and I suppose I need to mention Arnold Wesker. To my shame, I don't know his work terribly well at all. But I do know the play Chicken Soup with Barley pretty well because that was actually based on Sarah's life. And I just listened to that on the radio. Actually, it was on BBC. So I am now reading his autobiography and getting to know him a bit more. But going back, I like Shakespeare. I like Oscar Wilde. I love Joni Mitchell, music-wise. Just Pink Floyd, you name it. I'm a fan of most things, actually, which probably makes me quite flaky, but I think it makes me interesting. I can usually talk to most people about something.
I love that list. It's a wonderful list. Well, I'm curious to know. I know you've been very busy with chopped liver and unions, but have you had the chance to see any great theater lately, either here or back in the UK, that you might be able to recommend to our listeners?
Apart from Suffs, go and see Suffs, bring Suffs to the UK. So, but apart from that, yes, actually, I quite like to see fringe theatre because that's, it's a lot of what I do. I like to see one person's stuff. And I'm very sad that I've missed the opportunity to see Sarah Snook in the thingy that she's doing. What's his name? Dorian Gray. Dorian Gray. It's supposed to be the hottest ticket in London and I'm going to miss it, but there we are. But I did see, and there's a theme here, I saw a play called Nye at the National Theatre recently, which was fabulous. It's featured Michael Sheen, and it's about Nye Bevan, who was the Labour politician who set up the National Health Service. So you can see that there is a definite interest there, and that was fabulous. I really, really enjoyed that. And I like to see anything at the National Theatre. You can see, mainly because you can see from every seat in the house, even the cheapest ones. So I buy a cheap one. And I also saw another really good biography, actually, of, I can't remember the name of the play, which is really bad, but it was a play about Sarah Siddons, the 18th century actress. And that was great fun. So yeah, I do get out and about, but I'm looking forward to the Edinburgh Fringe, which I'm doing in August, because then I can actually go and see lots of stuff, and lots of it will be before everyone else gets to see it, because people will be trying stuff out there and hoping that it gets to go on tour and things.
That is wonderful. Some great suggestions there. Thank you for those. I want to ask you now, what is your favorite part about working in the theater?
Oh dear, that is really hard. Do you know what? There are two things I really like. One is when it's positive, the audience feedback. I really like knowing that what we've done has connected with people. And with this show in particular, I think I said earlier, lots of people have got their own personal stories. In fact, just yesterday, a lady told me that her father had been born in exactly the same part of the world as Sarah, and it was just like listening to him talk or whatever. So that's fabulous. But the thing that I think I enjoy the most is it's the process. It's the actual creating, not so much performing, which is always wonderful, but actually doing the research and working on things and actually really getting into the bones of character and finding out about, if it is their real life. If it's someone that's made up, then what life might have been for that person. So I think, yeah, the process I think is great, which is why, if we find these tunes for these other songs, you never know, this might be incarnation 4 of Chopped Liver and Unions. Just keep it going.
Yes. Well, that leads to my favorite question to ask guests, which of course is, what is your favorite theater memory?
Oh, that is so hard. I think the most special thing, actually, I've done a lot of stuff. I'm very old, but I think the most special thing was probably last year, when it was the first ever performance of this show. And it was in a tent in Brighton, and it was pretty cold and it was pretty wet. And Lady Wesker came to see the show, and she said really lovely things about it and brought me a bottle of champagne. And coming from the Wesker family, that was just so lovely. And that I thought, if I hadn't been doing the show, I'd never actually be in touch with any of these people. And it's all so lovely. So yeah, so it's a bit self-indulgent, but there you are. So that's something that happened in the theatre that I liked. But as far as their performance or anything goes, they're all so different, aren't they? That's the joy of what we do. Could I pick a favourite? I could pick loads of things that I've really enjoyed doing, or when I've had a good time and stuff. But it is the joy of theatre is that it's live, it's different every time.
I love those memories, though. Those were amazing. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Yes. Well, as we wrap things up, I would love to know, do you have any other projects or productions coming on the pipeline we might be able to plug for you?
Oh, yes. Well, so as far as plugging anything goes, so we are working on this show. When we leave here, we're going back to the UK, and I'll be at the Henley Park Open Air Theatre for one night only in Cornwall, 19th of June. And then 2 days after that, I'm at the Signet Theatre in Exeter. And then we're doing a couple of days early July, just as a lead up for the Edinburgh Fringe at the Rosemary Branch in London. And then Edinburgh Fringe, 2nd to the 24th of August. Woohoo. So that's what's happening with this one. And we're at very early stages with planning another show that should go out next year, which is taking us a little bit further back in time to someone who nobody knows, but everyone knows her family. So that should be fun. She was very theatrical in the late 17th century. So that'll be a much longer and more glamorous dress to wear, because I have to say, it's not a glamorous frock that anybody sees. We don't do Sara Wesker for glamour. We certainly do Sara Wesker for practical.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. So we've got some things we've got to keep tabs on you for. And that leads to my final question, which is, if our listeners would like more information about Chopped Liver and Unions, or about you, perhaps they'd like to reach out to you, how can they do so?
So we have most of the information is on our website, which is bluefiretheatre.co.uk. And you can also find us under Blue Fire Theatre. We're on X, as it's now called, Facebook and Instagram. And I just recently started a TikTok account, but don't get too excited by that because it's very, very boring. But it will get better. Everything gets better with practice. But I think the most interesting stuff is probably on the Insta, but we like Facebook followers as well. So come find us.
Wonderful. Well, Lottie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today, for sharing your amazing show and just everything you have shared with us today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been an absolute joy.
My guest today has been the amazing actress Lottie Walker, who's currently starring in the show Chopped Liver and Unions. It's playing now through June 7th at 59E59 theaters, and you can get your tickets and more information by visiting 59E59.org. We also have some contact information for our guests, which we'll be posting on our episode description as well as on our social media posts. But I'm telling you, run, don't walk, go right now. Get your tickets as soon as you can. There's not going to be many tickets left, I feel like, in the last week of the run. I'm just saying, it's so, so good. You will not want to miss it. It's Chopped Liver and Unions, playing now through June 7th. So until next time, I'm Andrew Cortes, reminding you to turn off your cell phones, unwrap your candies, and keep talking about the theater.
In a stage whisper.
Thank you.
If you like what you hear, please leave a 5-star review, like, and subscribe.
You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Stage Whisper Pod.
And feel free to reach out to us with your comments and personal stories at stagewhisperpod@gmail.com.
And be sure to check out our website for all things Stage Whisper and theater. You'll be able to find merchandise, tours, tickets, and more. Simply visit stagewhisperpod.com. Our theme song is Maniac by Jazzar. Other music on this episode provided by Jazzar and Billy Murray. You can also become a patron of our show by logging on to patreon.com/stagewhisperpod. There you will find all the information about our backstage pass as well as our tip jar. Thank you so much for your generosity. We could not do this show without you.